I don't think it's controversial to say that ASIC's RG90 has always had its critics and is generally acknowledged as not being a particularly useful piece of regulatory guidance from ASIC. We see a lot of advice, we see a lot of really good ways to engage with clients and a lot of really good SOAs, and we see some absolutely terrible documents which when you look at what's actually implemented with the client don't match anything like what's in the advice document. What I would say about what ASIC has released in the draft is that I think it's a positive move that ASIC has done a lot of research, and ASIC is trying to make a document which provides guidance to the profession around what are some better ways to communicate with clients. I wouldn't necessarily say everything in their proposal is perfect, but it's not a bad starting point. The major concern with it I have is that in 2017, when most people are carrying mobile phones in their pockets, when most people are engaging digitally with their financial situation, with the way they communicate, is a statement of advice template based on an A4 piece of paper still the right way to be communicating with consumers? I wouldn't have thought so, and especially with ASIC's continual message that engagement is important, digital is here, we're supporting people moving to digital channels. I'm not sure whether or not that's the right message to be sending out there still, and maybe there could have been a way to better embrace that. Having said that, they're using links to fact sheets, they're using links to videos, and I think those are all really good engagement tools within the statement of advice.
Yeah, and I think Ben made lots of really good points there. I think in terms of the progress of the document as a more effective SOA, it probably has made some progress, and there's some good bits where it's quite clear in how it explains the client situation and that sort of thing. But I think it's a big stretch to suggest that is a simplified, clear and concise document which somebody on the street can pick up and work out what's going on. And if that's what they're trying to do, then I think there's a lot of work still to be done. Our clients would still struggle without somebody helping them through that document to understand exactly what you're trying to convey and how it works for them. And I agree 100%, there's so many better ways that it could be executed. So I think it's a bit of a concern that a lot of people I've spoken to think that that's going to be a mandatory document or that's something we have to use. So I think there's an opportunity to break down some of those barriers, because I'm pretty sure that's not the case. But even if it is being held up as the right way to be demonstrating advice, I think that's a concern for all the reasons Ben just spoke about. There's so many other ways that it could be done better, and if ASIC's supposed to be wanting this to be an example, then try and set a better example, I suppose.
For some of it that's been stripped out, I have concerns, is it going to really protect the advisor? And your point is perfect around you will still, out of that document, really need to explain to clients. So given that you want to strip out a lot of disclaimers and refer to the PDS, well, expect the client to understand the PDS. The SOA is a challenge in itself, so imagine that you're referring to the PDS. So I think we have a great starting point. At least we're still working towards clear and concise, but I'm not sure that it's quite hitting the market at this point, no. And again, referring things out to the FSG, well, are you going to have that? That's the same FSG that everyone gives for every client. So we're going to have 2 FSGs, or we're going to include that disclaimer even if we were doing what we would deem a full piece of advice and not under the scale solution. So there's a bit to think about, and I hope that they do get a lot of contribution around where the suggestions to support it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, I think, that we all sort of seem to be saying that ASIC have given us a much better SOA by expanding it, what I think was 12 pages in the last version up to about 27 pages this time. So you've more than doubled the size, and we think it's better, which probably gives an indication maybe how unrealistic the first one was. But again, I think there's a couple of things. You always got to, it's a sample SOA, and I think the last thing anyone would want to see is everybody produces an SOA that looks like that, because for every individual advisor, every individual advice firm, every licensee, you need to be able to put your own personality into these things. I mean, if you ever sit down there and you read an SOA, it's not the most fun reading. So you need to be able to have some form of personality, some personalisation around it, because that's part of that whole client engagement piece. If that's what it's about and everyone gets the same stock standard, then what's the differentiation around it? And I think Ben's comment really sums it up. We all know that we have to provide a statement of advice, and there are legal requirements that need to go into the statement of advice. And I think it's going to be very hard to take it away from that. And you're never going to get it really short, you're never going to get it concise, and every licensee is going to have its own risk appetite as to how much by reference are we willing to incorporate, what things do we want in there, what doesn't need to be in there. But it actually comes back to, I think realistically, how do you make sure the client understands the advice that is being presented to them? And reading a 27-page document, or however long or short it happens to be, from page 1 to the last page is never going to do it. It's actually about the conversation. So I think that's where you go. The digital ways to enhance that conversation, enhance that engagement between a client and advisor is the real thing that we need to be focusing on.
I mean, one of the things that I often come back to, and I reflect on some of the SOA templates that I built in my previous roles, is that you'll have clients who have a very simple understanding of finances, and you'll have engineers and actuaries who will want to go down to multiple decimal points to calculate the exact returns and how things will impact their situation. And I think an SOA should be able to scale seamlessly, irrespective of whether or not you're dealing with somebody who just wants to have a quick glance at what their financial position is and what the strategy is going to be, and somebody who wants to get into that real detail and have a look at the impact of everything. And I think all of that can be achieved if you have a format that allows you to click to get more information, or go here to read more information, or look at this video to understand this better. And I think that's, as I said, that's the aspect that I think is missing in this sample SOA that ASIC's provided.
I guess there's a couple of points that are worth noting around this First Home Super Saver Scheme initiative, other than the fact it's a long, complicated name for it. There's always going to be debate about, can you use super for purposes other than for retirement? And if you go to sole purpose test, it sort of says that's what it should be there for. It shouldn't be for anything else. But I think also, a couple important points is, if it is about someone saving for their first home, there are no doubt, there's a lot of statistics out there that say people who are homeowners, generally when they get through to retirement ages, are going to be better off, because number one, they've managed to build up equity in an asset that hopefully by that stage they own in their own name. But it also means the amount of money they need to have set aside for their retirement years is less, because they're not having the rent to pay. So there is actually, I think, a linkage there as to how superannuation and the use of it in the appropriate ways can help support doing that. I think there are some questions about, using the super system to save for retirement, and there's some deemed earnings that are going to come onto that. How does that actually go against the real performance in the underlying fund, and are people going to be worse off as a result because the deemed earnings is higher, so they take out more? Again, we need to see all the legislation as to how this is going to work, so there's some concerns there. But I think the real positive, if nothing else, is if somebody is thinking about saving for their first home, and they go, what are the different ways we can do that? We can do it outside super like we do it today, or we can look at using the super system. Then hopefully that means more people at a younger age are actually going to, get more engaged around their super and see how it works and what the benefits are. And whether they use it towards that first home or not, at least if they're becoming more engaged around their super at an earlier age, that's got to make a positive difference in the longer run.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to open up the conversation around super for younger people, and I really like that aspect of it. I like the aspect of somebody starting to try to do something to help people to get into the property market, because it is a conversation we have every single day with our younger clients who are looking to buy their first home in Sydney, which is pretty hard work, or our older clients who are looking and going, well, my kids are never going to be able to afford to buy a place in Sydney, so what can I do to help them, and how should I be structuring things in that sense? So it's great that conversation's been had. Personally, I hate the idea of using super as the vehicle. I just think that's confusing everything. It just creates too much complexity that doesn't necessarily need to be there. I think it's the old first homeowner savings scheme they had in place obviously didn't work for various reasons, but that having a standalone separate vehicle seems to make a little bit more sense and have a little bit more clarity. The only proviso is, as Brian said, it is a good opportunity then to get people talking about super and what you can and can't do with super over various times, so to start that conversation.
We're starting to get questions already about how this thing is working, and I just wanted to make the point that we still haven't seen the draft legislation, even though the scheme was meant to start 4 days ago. So there are still a lot of questions to be answered. There's still a lot of information to come out. I can guarantee that whatever's drafted will not be the final form, and we'll see changes along that process. So there's a lot more information that we still need to get, and we just need to wait to see what that draft legislation looks like and how it actually makes its way through Parliament.
It's come from an affordability problem, right? And if you look at the people, and we're looking at an isolated group that we're trying to help, we're not trying to even help everyone in the community. These people don't even have that much in super. So it's great that they come forward to want to have the conversation. And I agree, I don't think it's the right vehicle. We've got to stop touching it. But even if they did happen to have enough money in there, they haven't been in their working careers probably that long, or earned the salaries that they will later in life. Even if we allow them to take the money out, look at what we're doing to the next generation later. We're penalising them and capping them so short that even if they want to put back what they took, we penalise them on the other end of the scale anyway. So it kind of conflicts with both ends that we have contributing to super.